The purpose of this film is to demonstrate one of the possible ways of notifying in case of fire, fire extinguishing, and partially evacuating patients. The partial evacuation takes place when it is necessary to transfer patients to the adjacent ward. This film is intended for employees of the University Clinical Center Ljubljana as an educational aid in fire drills and evacuation drills, and is a continuation of the film about the gradual evacuation of patients. The information about the fire alarm is always conveyed to the firefighter of the University Medical Center Ljubljana. The receiver of information can also be a security guard or a person responsible for delivering information. Fire in the storage room. Fire in the storage room. All employees must be familiar with the location of fire extinguishers and trained to use them. When using an internal hydrant, employees must be careful to stretch the fire hose so that it does not obstruct the relocation of hospital beds, and close or partially close the door to prevent the spread of smoke through the room. The person responsible for extinguishing the initial fires and evacuation oversees the coordination of actions. If any person responsible for extinguishing initial fires and carrying out the evacuation of the ward is absent or held up, she or he shall be replaced by the most experienced healthcare professional on the ward. We will first evacuate patients from the most endangered premises, i.e. rooms number 5, 6, and 7, and then all other rooms up to the entrance to the ward. When patients need to be transferred from a ward to an adjacent ward, the person responsible for extinguishing the initial fire and implementing the evacuation from the ward from which the patients will be transferred from must firstly notify the person responsible for extinguishing the initial fires and evacuation from the adjacent ward. Only then does he or she inform the other persons responsible for extinguishing the initial fires and carrying out the evacuation in the facility about the fire and the partial evacuation, and ask them for help in moving the patients with their staff. In case of fire, patients must be moved immediately down the corridor, away from the danger area, through at least one fire door. Patients' medical records should accompany them. When admitting patients from an adjacent ward, it is important to move the first hospital bed at the end of the hallway, as shown in Figure 1. The other beds until number 15 should follow. This enables the possibility of temporary accommodation of a larger number of patients in the ward. When evacuating patients from the room, close the door behind you. As a rule, the person responsible for extinguishing initial fires and evacuation designates the door leaf and the floor in front of the door with a slanted line, thus indicating the evacuation is in progress, and once the evacuation from the room is completed, writes the letter X. If there are no markings, it means that the evacuation from this area has not yet begun. The lines can be made using a felt tip pen, micropore tape, or any other means. Employees who have been appointed with a task to assist in the transfer of patients must report to the ward where the fire occurred to the person responsible for extinguishing the initial fires and implementing the evacuation. Hospital beds should be placed on the opposite side of the hospital rooms. This allows employees a better overview of patients in hospital rooms and admitted patients in the hallway. This method of temporary installation also allows employees to use free sockets to connect medical devices and equipment from adjacent premises.